A complete overview of Tudor history. Tudor history is observed through the years 1485 to 1603, beginning with the reign of Henry VII and ending with Queen Elizabeth I. The Tudor history era was significant in the shaping and reshaping of the English monarchy, religious views, political factions, and the ordinary lives of the common people. The Tudor period came into being on the back of the victory of Henry VII. Despite a tenuous claim to the throne, Richard III's Yorkist army was defeated on August 22, 1485 at the Battle of Bosworth Field. By defeating Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth, Henry VII was crowned King of England, thus beginning the dynasty of the Tudors and Tudor history. In total, through 5 monarchs, the Tudors ruled England and Wales for a total of 118 years, presenting us with a dynasty that contains arguably the most well-known figures in royal history. This rule contributed heavily to the shaping of England, and even Great Britain, that we all know today. Through religious reformation, socio-economic changes, and even the role of women, the English monarchy drastically shaped what we now know as the United Kingdom. The English monarchy is possibly the most critical aspect that defined Tudor history. The first monarch of the Tudor era was Henry VII. The War of the Roses, estimated to occur from 1455, 1487, and more recently known as the War of the Cousins, was a battle between two influential households, both with claims to the throne, the House of York and the House of Lancaster. In an attempt to both strengthen his claim to the throne and bring peace to the country, Lancastrian Henry VII made a strategic marriage to Yorkist Elizabeth Woodville. This marriage proved to be monumental in ending the fighting between the cousins, and it solidified a union between two of the most powerful families of this period. This union is also represented in the Tudor motif. The collaboration of the White Rose of York and the Red Rose of Lancaster were combined after the marriage of Henry and Elizabeth, demonstrating their unity to the English monarchy in England. The couple also went on to have 8 children together. However, only 4 would survive into adulthood: Arthur, Henry, Margaret, and Mary Tudor. While Arthur died very young after his marriage to Princess Catherine of Aragon, all 3 other children embarked on promising futures. Princess Margaret married James IV and became Queen Consort of Scotland. Similarly, Princess Mary was promised to Louis XII of France. Lastly, and perhaps one of the most influential figures of Tudor history, was Henry VIII, the sole surviving son of Henry VII and Elizabeth Woodville. Although he was initially steered towards a career in the church, as was typical for the second son in a royal family, Henry VIII ended up taking the throne in 1509, after the deaths of his brother in 1502 and his father in 1509. Henry quickly went on to marry his brother's widow, the Spanish Princess Catherine of Aragon, with whom he had a daughter, Mary, in 1516. However, Henry's story does not end here. He went on to have 5 other wives during his reign and 2 other legitimate children, Edward VI and Elizabeth I. Henry's reign was unprecedented. In the 36 years of his rule, he made several profound changes. His opinion towards Catherine of Aragon changed significantly once a male heir failed to arrive after 23 years of marriage. His desperation for a son who would preserve his legacy led Henry to reject the Catholic Church in favor of his own, the Church of England. In this church, where Henry possessed all supremacy, he was able to annul his marriage and remarry in order to have a son. After 6 marriages, Henry did indeed produce heirs to his throne. However, only one offspring was a boy. Edward VI reigned from 1547, directly after Henry's death, until 1553. Edward's rule was short-lived as he died only 6 years after his coronation, after a brief yet rapid battle with tuberculosis. During his brief reign, Edward was under the influence of his Privy Council, more specifically his regent and uncle, the Duke of Somerset. The latter wielded almost supreme power as regent, with the title of protector. After Edward's untimely death, the factions of the Tudor government were in disarray. With no male heir to succeed Edward, the decision lay between his 2 sisters, Mary and Elizabeth. The idea of a woman succeeding the throne was not ideal, but the decision was nevertheless made based on the religious affiliation of each woman. Edward had spent his 6-year rule implementing what his father did half-heartedly, converting Catholicism to Protestantism. However, due to the line of succession, the crown would have passed on to Edward's half-sister and devout Catholic Mary. To avoid reverting to the past, Edward, on his deathbed, installed Lady Jane Grey as Queen, a fervent Protestant woman. However, Mary fought for her place as Henry VIII's firstborn, and as a result, Lady Jane was only queen for a total of 9 days before she was executed. Assuming her role as queen, Mary threw the lives of the Tudor people again into disarray, making her first act reverting England to Catholicism. Mary's reign proved highly problematic for Tudor history. Aside from her devout Catholic views, her persecution of Protestants, or heretics, resulted in her becoming widely unpopular with much of the gentry in public. Throughout her rule, Mary had over 300 religious dissenters burned at the stake in what is known as the Marian persecutions. Queen Mary's gender was a huge problem to the Tudor nobles at the time. Being the first woman in not only Tudor history but also English history to rule in her own right, the issue of her marriage was paramount. Many nobles insisted that Mary should wed a Protestant man to unite the currently fractured civilian population. However, refusing to be bullied into submission by the gentry, Mary elected to marry Prince Philip II of Spain in 1554. However, the marriage to Philip did not produce any heirs. Despite many attempts and false pregnancies, Mary failed to conceive a child. In 1558, for years after her marriage, Mary's health was failing due to suspected ovarian cancer or influenza. She finally recognized her Protestant half-sister Elizabeth on her deathbed, who would become the second Queen of England. Elizabeth I reigned from 1558 until 1603 for 45 years. Her rule is generally considered one of the most glorious in English history. The daughter of Anne Boleyn, Elizabeth faced much discrimination due to her heritage from birth. However, her character, education, and inherited intelligence, determination and shrewdness from both parents proved her an exceptional ruler, one who craved autonomy. However, her reign was not without its troubles. Catholic enemies made numerous attempts on her life, as well as an outright attack from Rome itself in the form of a papal bull. Additionally, her private life was scrutinized mercilessly. Her resistance to taking a husband meant that it was the first time that a woman in the English monarchy had ever ruled alone. However, regardless of the problems Elizabeth faced during her rule, she was a pivotal character in Tudor history. Elizabeth I was often named, even today, as Gloriana, Good Queen Bess, and the Virgin Queen. Her death in 1603 marked the end of the Tudor monarchy.